didn't have a lot of damage from earthquake, but the cities did. There was a couple of cities that were really destroyed. But the official death toll, something like 50,000. Ramazan, I heard from a few people, he think it's more like 250,000. They didn't count and they didn't help a lot of the outlying villages. All the aid went to the cities. And he said, after a week or two, in some places you couldn't walk around because of the smell from the dead bodies. And he has these just horror stories from it. It was just terrible. They went through this terrible time. And then they got flooded. In Shenlerfa, they got flooded. And like 14, 15 people died because there's people living in tents from the earthquake, and a bunch of people died in the flood. I remember Ramazan picks me up from the airport and he's like, I was half expecting like a meteorite to hit us as the next thing. So we were going through that. I mean, that's a lot of stuff was shut. The museum wasn't available, which apparently the museum's one of the major highlights there. Kind of the story of my life, not getting into museums, given the Egypt. And, it was, so the museum got flooded. We saw a lot of flood damage. Like, there's this whole massive big shopping mall, and there's just like 2 feet of mud in the parking lot, and the whole thing was flooded out. Lots of places were shut. Ramazan, he works for the government, so he could open a few of them, but they literally moved 65,000 artifacts out of the museum and spread them all out over the place. So you couldn't see any of that stuff. And then the other thing that happened is it was Ramadan. So we went there during Ramadan, which is like, so we're a bunch of Westerners and people on holiday, and they want to have a drink, right? So people are like, where the hell's the booze? You can't get any booze. You can't drink anywhere. You can't buy it anywhere. We found one store in the whole city of 2.5 million people that was about 30 minutes away, and I'm not talking like a big liquor barn like, giant Bevmo or something. This is like a 7-Eleven, which has it. And the first night, we just went in Ramazan's car, a couple of us, and did the similar thing to what we do in Egypt. You bring in a suitcase and just like take all the beers because you just sell them. Or people pay you for what they want. Back at the hotel, and you're buying for like 25 plus people, so you buy a lot of booze. But yeah, so once we got that dialed in, and then you can't really drink in public, or the hotel didn't want us drinking in the front room, so we had this back room in the hotel. It was a real nice hotel, but we were like right away from everyone. Big open couches and like nice room, but it quickly got sort of termed the infidel room. So we'd hang out at night and do stuff. It was nice. We were based in one hotel that we were like packing bags up and moving around and stuff. So that happened. So there's some excavations. There's so much. Look at this shit that's here. Like, they've been using this building material in these towns forever. So this is Haran. Let's just keep going through this and I'll keep talking. We'll get to the interesting stuff too. I just want to look at. I haven't looked at this footage. I haven't looked at any of this stuff yet. So you guys will. Discovering this at the same time as I am. So that was a bit of a challenge, but we made it work. Yeah, beautiful place, big bazaar right near where we were, just full of people. Maybe I can look at some pictures here in a sec. What's this little drone shot finishes? All your beer belong to us, pretty much. Those guys, because we went back a few times, and then we ran 2 week-long tours. 2 groups, and they loved us. They're like, oh, my friends, Actually, it was funny. One night we were in there. It's just like we're just in the store buying, and all of a sudden you just hear this gunshots out, like 5 or 6 gunshots. Looking, and it was pretty loud, and it wasn't too close, but it was like guns went off, and the guy, and we just sort of, huh? And we look at the guy behind the counter. He just shrugs and goes, Texas. Turkey might have had the most significant for moving the needle. I think so, in terms of, it probably was a wedding or something. Yeah, it's not like a gunfight erupting. It was a very one-sided gunfight. If that's the case, guys just let off a few rounds. Yeah. Quite hard to own a gun there, apparently, but I'm sure people do. So this is the quarry for Jethro. It's like Moses' father-in-law. So Shenlerfa is the city of prophets. This is the birthplace of Abraham, and Abraham's kind of the central figure and the founder of the Judaism and Islam and Christianity, essentially. So you have all 3 of those, Judeo-Christian religions or religions of the book. It's a very holy place for everyone in those faiths. And this was apparently the place where, in that city, was where he was born, and then he was burned. And there's a story in the Quran that talks about and this is Fish Lake, so we're staying right on this area. So apparently there's an area where Abraham was burned, but as soon as the flames touched his body, they turned to water, and then the wood that he was on, all the wood turned to fish. So it's this beautifully manicured park with this massive lake with all these channels full of fish, and they're all holy and sacred. Nobody takes the fish or whatever. And Russ made a joke at one point. He said, "Oh, there's dinner," and Ramazan looks at him and goes, "This is the last dinner you'd ever have." And there's also like this sacred little lake, this pond. It's in one of the mosques, so you go in and you can look at it. And it's apparently where he went in as a baby and he came out as like for 6 months, and he came out as like a 15-year-old boy or something, right? But yeah, Fish Lake's the name of it.
Crikey.
It's the name of the little area in Shenlofa. But it used to be called Urfa. It was the biblical Edessa. So Edessa, Edessa. So it's an ancient city. It's been there for thousands of years. It's a big old castle that sits on top of the hill that I got all this footage of. It's at least 2,000 years old. I think it probably goes back further. Well, they actually say that it was a mound that goes back, 10,000 years. There's actually a mound and structures inside it. And as you walk around it, because it's on top of the hill, you look at the other sort of hilltops which have houses on them, and you can see caves and stuff all carved through it. Everywhere we drove here, all the hills, it's all this limestone hills. There are hundreds of caves, absolutely everywhere. Like you wouldn't believe how much caves and stuff's been going on here. I'm sure there's people in that city with a 10,000-year-old wine cellar under their houses. Yeah, I mean, you got stuff going well and truly back into Neolithic times as people have been living here. And then, I mean, one of my favourite sites was Karahan Tepe, which we'll get to. Karahan's fascinating, given that they've only just started excavating in like 2019. And it's just huge. You can just see the scale of it, and they're barely even excavating in the main area. But this was supposedly, if I remember correctly, yeah, this was this area that was like I forget the name of it. It was apparently Moses' father-in-law, the tomb of Jethro or something. It was actually some cool stuff here. We couldn't get to to Nemrut the first week because of all the snow. But so this was Shenlofa. This is the view early morning out of the hotel. Fish Lake. This little bazaar back here. You can't really see a lot. This was the bazaar in the city, just across the road from where we were on the hotel. Just rows and rows of this maze-like place with spices and nuts and textiles and furniture. They're like doing blacksmithing in there. They're doing woodwork in there. They're just thousands of these little stores. You can see like the old sort of constructed stone buildings everywhere. Opens up into these squares, into a mosque. And this is the Fish Lake area. The mosque. This has the little lake where Abraham was, did his little time traveling thing. Obviously the mosque here. So the spires from the mosque fell off. This is earthquake damage. The tops of these spires of a lot of these mosques fell out. Lots of cats running around everywhere. Of course, you catch the cats just doing their thing. Yeah. I was using this this Google Pixel 7 Pro. I really like it. How does Turkey feel in general about their archaeology? Is much interest? They're really trying to encourage tourism in this particular area, the Göbekli Tepe area, which is part of the reason I got invited. So these are the fish in Fish Lake. This is Shenlofa Castle with some very Roman-esque columns on top of it. Little cafe area down the bottom here, and then this is the castle up on top of the hill. So yeah, this is Fish Lake. So this was the restaurant just next to the hotel where we eat a lot. It's a beautiful, like I said, beautiful place. This is the whole Fish Lake area. That mosque we looked at's over on the left. And you have this whole big castle up here with a giant moat. We finally got up there sort of later on to look at it.
AI is the funniest guy I know.
Yeah, really cool.
Next to one right quick.
There is a big ass moat all around this castle, and it was shut for earthquake damage as well. We couldn't go in there, but we could walk around it. This is back in the bazaar. All the gold merchants. Pigeon shops. Want to get some funky pigeons? Lots of pigeons. This one here, the pink one looks. I assume that's pink, rather than blood, but pink. He probably gets pecked to hell by its friends. And of course, The Turkish coffee. There's Russ and George Howard. Yeah, so here's Haran. This was originally this giant big walled city. This is what it looked like. And there's a remnants of this structure here. That's this. So this thing here, this fortress at the gate. This is the remnants of that. You can see the round pillars of it still. I did fly over there before, but I lost all that footage for some reason. This was our transport, a couple buses, mini buses. They had some good digs here. They were still working. I mean, it's just, there's so much going on here. Excuse me. The oldest period of building there at Haran or in Turkey. I mean, you're talking obviously Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, so 12,000 years old. It's you mean Göbekli Tepe? So we worked this out. It's 10,000 BC, so 12,000 years old. Right in the younger. So it's a questionable dating in terms of I think it's much older. A lot of us think it's much older, and I'm going to do a video about it. But that's kind of the youngest date we have, and it's solid. Like no one else was in there after it. Like those are the dates where we know it was buried. But again, it's one of those sites where it looks like you had multiple periods of occupancy, and I'll show you. We'll get into the photos of it sooner or later. Yeah, actually, I did enjoy this. This was at Haran. You don't think like look at this? They're just digging it up. Like these are all these blocks of stone, like limestone, a lot of it, and they're just picking them up with like a tractor lift and then going and using them for stuff. That's probably what these guys do all day. Standard practice, you know. This was pretty cool, I thought too. It's probably upside down. No, it's not upside down. So this was like there's some interesting pieces of stuff around here, and there's other things that go down there. I think this was a well. But Göbekli Tepe at 12,000 years old and Karahan Tepe is older, at least 500 years older, and it's like 4 times bigger.
Might be a well.
Is granite used there? That's Ramazan there. It's granite. We didn't see a lot of granite. There's basalt. Mostly everything's limestone. Welcome back to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and today I want to take you on a journey below. Hello and welcome to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and in this video I want to share with you some of my favourite examples of the evidence for ancient forms of high technology. From the machining marks and construction techniques used
His voice got lower through time. It's like he
to
grew
the
up.
measurable precision and symmetry of ancient artifacts, big and small. These enduring mysteries are difficult to explain from within our orthodox view of human history. Often wrought from the very hardest forms of natural stone. These objects,
I guess when you go on Joe
and the
Rogan
techniques
Experience, your
used to make them
testosterone level
represent a
increases
class
5-10-fold.
of out-of-place artifacts that seems far beyond the known capabilities and the tools of the ancient civilizations we attribute them to. These astonishing precision objects undeniably come to us from the distant past. They are found on ancient sites, yet often they seem far superior to the work that's around them, the cruder and far less precise signature common to so many Bronze Age or primitive civilizations. Did these
Actually,
same
Spike most likely.
civilizations also possess some form of unknown advanced capability, or the advanced
Peak.
tools required to make such objects? I suppose it's possible, but there is an utter lack of evidence
this
for
guy,
any
Ozzy.
such tools in the archaeological record.
Ozzy
nor
was
any
on
record
Joey
of them in
Rogan
these
twice, I
civilizations'
think.
own histories. Is it possible that these objects are far older
Your
and
favorite
that the
Aussie.
history of civilization on this planet is longer than we ever believed? Could the ancients, at least as we know them,
This
have
guy, Ben
inherited
Van
some of
Kerkwyk.
these artifacts and architecture? Could they have found them to be sacred, incorporated them into their cultures, and used them for ritual or for ceremony?
Oh wow, insane.
After all, our own modern civilization has inherited the very same objects, and we still find them to be sacred. We still use them for ceremony, even today. The technology that's evident in this type of stonework is generally dismissed as mostly irrelevant by mainstream archaeology.
I'm
Yet
amazed
it's
Aussies
frequently
watch
found
Joe
to be
Rogan.
utterly remarkable by anyone with an
It's
open
like,
mind and the will to apply
you think
a
they'd
basic
watch
analysis of
their
the
own
engineering
Aussie?
principles that must have been used in their construction.
I guess he's an
Many researchers
MMA
and experts
international
from the past
commentator,
couple of centuries have done just this.
and he has
And
people like
they
Elon
often
Musk and
report being
shit
utterly
on the
awestruck
show.
by these ancient accomplishments and left wondering just how Bronze Age or other relatively primitive cultures managed such feats. From the luminary Sir Flinders Petrie in the 1800s, one of the very first to apply engineering principles to the evidence for precision stonework in ancient Egypt, to a long list of modern engineers like Christopher Dunn, stonemasons like Yusuf Aoun, architects like Randall Carlson, and many other researchers, all with expert understanding of construction techniques. They all find it very difficult to reconcile these achievements with the known capability of the ancient cultures our academics insist created them. Their findings support the idea that these could well be, in fact, out-of-place objects, and that they require a level of technology that is far beyond that of the cultures that we attribute them to. Along with my own observations, my own travels, it is on this basis, on the opinion of a long list of qualified experts, and not those of mainstream archaeology or anthropology, that I too believe this category of stonework to be evidence for unknown and ancient forms of high technology. On topics like precision engineering, tool making, and large-scale construction, it's these people we should turn to for truly expert opinion, rather than those of tenured academics who write textbooks about the people, practices, traditions, and the daily life of ancient cultures. Archaeologists don't tend to write books about precision engineering, and it by no means degrades the profession by saying that many of its members generally have only a limited interest and certainly no professional expertise in construction technologies.
Hilarity ensues.
Even when the engineering or technological aspects of objects are addressed by mainstream archaeology, it's always cast in the light
That's
of
a
the
cop
known
out, though.
capability of ancient
I want AI to
civilizations,
explain
often
the
leading to
hilarity. It kind of
circular logic
does.
that goes nowhere. Something like this, an example. The Old Kingdom granite monoliths like columns and boxes must have been made by copper chisels and pounders.
AI
Because
responds
that's
to
what we know
questions
that they
like
have.
my
There's no proof they
third
didn't.
grade self would respond to
Meanwhile,
questions,
analysis of the
providing like
objects
the
themselves
most
and the
literal and
technology
most
needed to
the
make
least
them
amount of
is direct
information just to
evidence
get the
for
answer
such an
completed and
advanced
finished.
capability. After all, we have the objects, which is the result of the tools, and we have the markings, which is the
Like, it's such
signature
an
from the
asshole.
tools. Yet this evidence is dismissed because there have been no tools found. Therefore, the Egyptians must have made them with copper chisels and
AI's a
pounding
big
stones,
asshole.
because that's what we
But it's
know they
hilarious.
had. It's a circular argument, and it's a neat way of avoiding addressing the actual evidence for precision and high technology in these ancient objects. Just ask, where are the tools, and walk away. Never mind the quantifiable proof that we have of their use that is represented by the objects themselves. This is why archaeologists rarely consider the manufacturing of such precision objects, because the answers risk upsetting the status quo of the story of history.
If you're asking about the analysis of the inside of the vases, we only dealt with the contents. We haven't worked on the techniques used to make the vases.
If the Old Kingdom Egyptians didn't have the capability to actually do this work, then who did? And when? Many mainstream archaeologists and anthropologists are deeply vested in maintaining this story of history. They derive their academic power and authority as the experts on this story and of all of its aspects. The motive to protect it and to resist change is somewhat understandable, if admittedly frustrating at times. After all, resisting change and maintaining the status quo is the very nature of establishment. Before we get into the specifics and examples, I want to set up a little bit of context, as there are certainly a lot of interpretations of just what ancient high technology could mean, and statements or terms like this get thrown around quite a lot. In my case, it's pretty specific. I'm talking about the evidence for technology that is not explainable by the tools found in the archaeological record, nor is it explainable by what we know of the capabilities of ancient civilizations. I'm not talking about lasers or spacecraft or mystical energies and crystals. I'm talking about the verifiable and measurable evidence of advanced tooling and machining of very hard types of stone, and the advanced construction methodologies that must have been
No
used
idea, my
in
friend.
the creation of various forms of ancient megalithic architecture or artifacts. This evidence isn't in every part of ancient civilizations, in fact, far from it. And one of the distinguishing factors that I'll illustrate in this video is exactly this point, that quite often this evidence, all these objects, stand out in stark contrast to the
I know we miss
relatively
them.
primitive levels of technology in the ancient work that's around them, or even on them, as is the case for much of the hieroglyphs that have been badly scratched.
He's given
into
so much,
precision-made
I mean,
objects like the boxes and
He
statues.
gives so much
from ancient
time and
Egypt.
money and attention.
I also want to state why I think this set of
I can only
evidence is
imagine.
important, as it goes against the narrative of the development of civilization as we know it. It's an important part of framing the wider argument, that for a re-evaluation of the roots of human civilization, with the idea that we've both risen high and been struck down by catastrophe before. I've got specific videos on several of the other aspects to this argument, things like the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the extension of the human timeline, or even what the ancients themselves said about their own origins.
You know what's really
Both
interesting
the
though?
ancient Egyptians and Sumerians
Like, he went to
traced their
TwitchCon, you know what I
civilizations
mean?
back tens of thousands of years further
Like,
than
he
we
took
can.
the pilgrimage, and you know
And
how
we would be
sometimes how
hard-pressed
some
to
people
find
they.
any ancient
I'm not saying
culture
that Twitch
didn't
is a
have fire,
fad,
flood,
or that this game is a
cataclysms
fad.
in their
I'm
own
not saying that,
origin
but you know how
stories.
like sometimes you
Events that
go
their advanced
once
gods
you
or
you
ancestors
go to the
barely lived
event, you
through,
do the
and
pilgrimage.
because of them, were forced to
Then
restart civilization again.
you kind of are over the
Modern
hill,
science
the
is validating
climax.
the evidence for catastrophism,
Anecdotes
and
with
the
him
grains of
stepping on
truth
chicken
that are
fetus. I'll
contained
just still
in these
quotes.
stories. Catastrophism is now part of
But you know what I
mainstream
mean? Like,
science, but its
the what's
impact
the
has
word? The
not yet been
postpartum
fully
depression.
felt
It's
when
like
it
he went to
comes cultural
TwitchCon and then
implications and the
had like
soft sciences of
postpartum
history
depression, which
or
I mean I don't
archaeology.
understand. I don't.
With
I mean I totally
1980s,
understand.
What we see is this
Like,
acceptance of catastrophism in
I mean
Earth
that's a
history,
theory, but
right? And so that by the time we get to the turning of the millennium,
it's just too much.
right,
It's like
by
when
the
you
year
turn your
2000,
hobby into your
catastrophism
existence.
is now pretty much an accepted
It's a
paradigm
fine
in
line.
Earth history.
You know, I go to
But not
bed thinking, am
necessarily
I
in
am I an
humans.
entertainer?
Not
The-
yet.
Is that my
This
purpose in
now,
life, to
I would say, is
entertain?
the next evolutionary development in catastrophism,
Yeah.
is recognizing its role
a valid
in
question.
our human story on Earth. And that
Or is that
leads us
just right
directly
now?
into the
I'm an entertainer right
the
now.
issue of why, for example, we don't find that hard evidence for ancient advanced technological civilizations that the critics are
I'm not
so
saying I'm
insistent
entertaining you,
upon
Moonraker. We're friends, but I mean,
requiring.
what I'm doing is entertainment.
But what they don't understand, and this has become clear to me,
I don't
talking to
I
them,
don't
reading their
I don't have
stuff,
any
seeing
what's it
them,
called?
you know,
Stigma against it or entertainers. I don't.
is that they don't
They have a role. They're super
understand
important.
the scale
One of the most
of
appreciated
these
people.
global events.
Right.
They don't
But it's like, is
understand
that?
how extreme
I don't think that's
the
who I
Younger
am.
Dryas event and associated
Can you imagine going down that
foreshocks and
Twitch rabbit hole,
aftershocks really work.
pulling back the
I
curtain,
think this
as in
evidence
Wizard
for
of
ancient high
Oz?
technology is a vital
Entertain.
piece of the overall argument for a re-evaluation of human history and our origins. And to me,
That's
it's an
fucking cool.
indicator for a past that is both longer and far more complex
exactly
than
what
the
it
one
is.
we generally accept. You know, the one that says human civilization only really began around 6,000 years
And again,
ago.
I'd be fine. I'd be
Even
much
saying that
happier
at
doing
this
this
point
if we were
sounds
paid
a
like a
little bit
living
ridiculous
wage to
me,
do
but
this.
that
Not by
is
you, but I
indeed
mean by
still
Twitch
orthodox
and
position.
advertisers.
Without
no,
derailing this video, I
we're
do
in
want
this
to make a
fucking
point,
struggle
as I'm sure some of you might be thinking.
where
hang on,
nobody's
hasn't the
friends. Everyone
discovery
just
and
uses each
engagement
other
of
for
Göbekli
fucking
Tepe with its
attention.
11,000-year-old radiocarbon dating and deliberate
some
burial,
sort of
hasn't
weird
this pushed back the date
look at me
for human civilization?
generation.
You would think so, and I and many others certainly think so.
And it's like,
But
it's
if
not
you
a
follow the
generation. I
mainstream
think it's just the
debate, such as it
circumstances
is,
of
or
the
if you look up
situation of the
entry for
economy
Göbekli
and all the
Tepe on
bullshit
that
and the
bastion of
shitty deal.
establishment groupthink that
The
is Wikipedia,
the
you'll find that the site is still attributed
Yo,
to
well, I put it on.
Neolithic
Thanks, bro.
hunter-gatherer cultures. Mainstream archaeology, you see, rather than risk
Thanks, man.
being wrong about
I'm
their
gonna need it.
precious story of history, a story from which derives all of their academic authority and tenure, simply changed their definition of what it means to be a hunter-gatherer. As if one of the largest megalithic sites in the world, with hundreds of expertly made pillars and stone circles, with individual pillars ranging from 10 to 50 tons in weight, as if all of this was made by nomadic tribes of loincloth-wearing savages as some sort of weekend hobby. You know, the boys get together, go camping, get away from the
Thanks,
kids,
bros.
do a bit of rock carving, that type of thing. It's ridiculous. The site obviously requires real civilization to have been built. It obviously requires decades of training and expertise for the quarrying, shaping, and the artwork wrought in the stone. It obviously needed a large population base and diversified, organised culture in order to support such activity. We now know that Göbekli Tepe may have represented something even more important and more profound. Its artwork seems to represent a dating system and might contain a record of the Younger Dryas cataclysm itself, along with other cosmic events of the time. Dr. Martin Sweatman, author of Prehistory
That's
Decoded,
so dumb.
has discovered a strong link between the artwork at Göbekli Tepe and the alignment of constellations going back in time, including what seems to be a connection to the Younger Dryas comets or cosmic bodies themselves. I've interviewed Martin on this channel, and he has an excellent series of videos on his YouTube channel for anyone that's interested in his work or the science behind the Younger Dryas in general. There's some links to those below, or you could just buy his book. I think that the late Klaus Schmidt, who was the director for the excavation at Göbekli Tepe for many years, I think that he knew that this site represented civilization, but he was very cautious to not risk his archaeological career by coming out and challenging the status quo story of history with a direct claim against it. Instead, he said that it represented a transition from
Having
hunter-gatherers
a good
to
night.
an agricultural society.
Are you gonna go to
which,
bed?
to my mind, is a roundabout way
I understand,
of
man.
calling it civilization. Such is
Oh,
the
having a
state
good day.
of
I
modern
understand it.
archaeology.
Having a good night. Yeah.
When new ideas
Cool, man.
and new
Friday
data
night?
challenge the
Yeah, buddy.
status quo, things like the evidence
Saturday
for the
morning,
Younger
thanks, man.
Dryas, or for unexplainable high technology, or even the things ancient cultures said about their own ancestors. These ideas are first ignored, then they're attacked, mostly by attacking the man and not the argument. If attacking the argument fails, then the context around the evidence is twisted, such that it becomes essentially meaningless to the narrative of history. Just look at the treatment Graham Hancock has received by academia throughout his career for the crime of successfully raising such ideas and opening so many minds across the world. Most recently, he was the subject of a full 27 pages of ad hominem and strawman arguments and attacks by Professor John Hoops and the Society of American Archaeology. These articles are mostly aimed at Hancock's new book, America Before, but rather than address the specifics of his arguments head-on, they seek to reset the context around it, framing it all as some sort of fringe esoteric tradition, not worthy of serious consideration. Invoking Bigfoot, ancient aliens, Atlantis, and all number of things that have really nothing to do with Hancock's book, the articles attempt to
Bigfoot.
discredit anything that wasn't written from within the safe spaces of tenured academia as pseudoscience or pseudo-archaeology. Not only that, but Hoops also sees fit to attach the worst type of modern dog-whistling calls for outrage to Hancock's work and to the entire field of non-mainstream history research. I was genuinely appalled when I read this, and I felt the need to deconstruct these articles and their logical fallacies in some
No
depth
business being this
on
hard.
my
Oh, I
live
love it. It's the
stream,
best.
And there's a link to that one below.
It's the best.
Hoops and his establishment crowd have also
I
been
think the
actively
guards could be.
working on social
I mean,
media
I
to
like
discredit
that they're
the Younger Dryas
one-hit
cosmic
shot
impact
kill
theories
headshots. I like
as
that.
nothing more than the
But they could be a
recycling of
little.
ancient
They could be a little
esoteric comic
stronger.
myths or
They could be like the
catastrophist
Caverns
books from
00
the
guards.
1800s, written well before the concept
or
of
like the
plate
cradle
tectonics was
guards.
even known.
They could be a little stronger.
Yes, people have been talking
This one,
about
yeah, for
comets for
sure.
a long time, and for good reason, just
By
ask the
far.
dinosaurs. But accounts from the past have nothing to do with the modern scientific work.
I mean, look at the
that's uncovering
architecture of
the
this
truth
level, and then
of
look
the
at the
Younger Dryas
guards.
event.
Then the gun.
Hoops chooses to
The guns are the
completely
best in this
ignore
level.
the now hundreds of
You have
scientific,
Jaws.
peer-reviewed papers that have come
You have
out
the
since
music. You have the
2007
launching.
when the
Because look at
theory
this.
was
You have
first
megalithic,
and in doing so,
Teotihuacan, and then you have like straight into the future. It's amazing. I
George
love this
Howard
level.
and Mark Young have put together a comprehensive list.
And
of
dude, there's all
all
that
of the
like
scientific
megalithic
papers
artwork,
surrounding
that
the
Mayan
Younger Dryas.
artwork written
It's
on the
in
walls.
bibliography on the Cosmic
I
Tusk
want to
website.
figure out what it
And
means.
that's
They
all the
like all those
bibliography is.
hieroglyphs,
It's a
those
list
Mayan
with
hieroglyphs. I wonder
links
if
to
they
the
used
individual
actual
papers. It includes the papers
Mayan
for
writing.
the impact hypothesis, which
or like
is the majority
Olmec
of papers,
societies, you know.
and it also includes those against it or critical of
It's
the
pretty
theory.
incredible.
Despite not being involved in any of these papers, nor even in the scientific disciplines that are mostly behind them, Hoops insists on calling this bibliography biased, and from his high seat of academic tenure vocally and repeatedly recommends that, instead of looking at the scientific
It's all
evidence.
different. It's all
The
unique.
public should only read the entry about the Younger Dryas cosmic impact that is on Wikipedia, as he claims this to be a truly unbiased source. It may not come as a surprise that this Wikipedia entry also strays far
Look at
from the
that.
scientific literature. It invokes Graham Hancock, Ignatius Donnelly, and it suggests the whole theory is a
defo Aztec.
recycled idea from so-called fringe authors, and it only barely stops short of
crazy.
calling the whole thing pseudoscience.
Pretty yeah, man. It's like
Perhaps it says this
Yeah,
because
is that
it's
Olmec
Professor
head? Looks like an
Hoops
Olmec head.
himself that has been writing this article. Just click on the revision history of the document on Wikipedia and the proof is right there. It's brazen, I'll give him that, but he really must
give a
think
shit
that the
over-
general
yeah.
public like you and me are pretty stupid.
it's true.
Because I don't think I could find a better example
I think
of
so.
academic establishment bias.
It's really
than
well
this.
made. Toad was saying this is the best well-made
In
level
another
by
recent
far in the
livestream, I
game.
dug
I'm like,
into
yeah,
the
you're
history of
right.
this document, and George Howard has a great new article up on the Cosmic
Just the
Tusk
guards.
that
The
shows
guards
just
are
how
amazing.
John Hoops has been trying to discredit the Younger Dryas cosmic impact. Links to both of those are below. Sadly, this isn't an isolated example of establishment bias and manipulation that
guns.
gets employed in order to maintain
They,
the
like,
status
there's
quo.
nothing better than like a AR-33.
In my
Like
documentary on the ancient Egyptian tube drills, I showed how Christopher Dunn confirmed
An
the
M16,
claims of Flinders Petrie,
AR-15.
claims for a spiral groove on the famous drill
It's like
core
it's just so
number 7,
amazing.
and these grooves indicate advanced technology, and these
You know,
grooves were
in
both
video
measured
games.
and confirmed by Dunn with modern tools.
And
I also show how Dunn exposed the entire establishment argument against
I'm not
Petrie's
gonna say
claim,
anything.
boiling down to some deliberately manipulated and tilted photographs in a
in
textbook.
real life, but don't
These
don't go around
photographs were
shooting
tilted
people.
in order to make the groove look horizontal on the page rather than spiral. This actually gets quoted as an authoritative source in other mainstream textbooks. You see, we just can't have new discoveries or scientific evidence upsetting the mainstream narrative. Wikipedia pages get edited, photographs get tilted,
fuck you.
and Göbekli Tepe was nothing more than a weekend playground for bored hunter-gatherers. Okay, derailing over. Let's get down to some examples of ancient high technology. I've grouped these examples into categories, and this will be a two-part
Nice.
video in order to cover as many of them as I can, and I want to start with the evidence for machining. By this term, I mean the marks and indications of advanced tools that have been used to cut or shape stone blocks and objects.
Insane.
And these tools are definitely not found in the archaeological record. The examples take the form of saw cuts and machining marks, and tube drill holes and cores. Striations
my-
and lines
I
of
used to
varying
play
fineness that indicate degrees of
Pistols, License to Kill.
Many of the objects with such marks come from sites
No
known to
no
exist
auto aim,
during the Old
no
Kingdom
radar.
period of ancient Egypt, or
That's
from
like the
other
best.
parts of the world that also had an equivalent Bronze Age technology, typically with no access to iron or steel tools. The tools that are
That's
found
like that was
that
probably
come
my
from these
favorite.
periods
Pistols,
are
License to
primitive
Kill,
hand tools,
no auto aim.
flint knives, copper or bronze
No
chisels,
radar.
adzes, or
It's like the
stone
best.
pounders. These do not produce machining marks.
We're so
and
annoying.
clearly
Yeah, the
none of them
mines. The
were
mines
mechanized
was
or
artistic,
powered.
man. It became an
What's
art.
more, the
you know,
Old
art
Kingdom
form.
was not thought to have had access to the wheel. Yet, in many Old Kingdom locations, we can see the evidence for precise and powerful tools that certainly operated on principles involving the wheel and that seem to have cut through
Man, Pistons
incredibly
License
tough
to Kill,
material like granite
It
diorite
still came
basalt
down
with
to what
seeming
weapon
ease.
you would spawn
Some of these
beside. It
machining
didn't
marks
really
note
always
consistent
come
and
down to
measurable
skill.
arcs that we can use to
Because sometimes you
estimate
don't,
the saw's
like the
size.
more skilled
And
player
these
would
tools
spawn
must have been
beside
truly monstrous. They must also have
magnum.
been powered by some mechanism. Perhaps my
so maybe
favourite example
pistols
of what
not
must have been
licensed to
just
kill
a
would be
huge
probably better,
circular
but
saw, or perhaps a swing saw, is found at the Old Kingdom site of Abu Sir. This megalithic block of basalt that sits in front of one of these several pyramids.
oh, I was always
on site
Moonraker Elite.
looks much like many
I was
others
always
that
the
are found
banana
here.
guy,
Yet a
the
close
troll banana
examination
guy,
reveals some astonishing characteristics.
the male
The top
Moonraker
of this
Elite,
block,
the
although
second
weathered
last
from millennia
character.
in the desert, has clearly been cut by a blade that has a very distinctive circular arc to it. It left obvious striations and grooves in its passing, indicating
apparently it's
a
hard to
rapid
see in the
rate of
stack
cutting
in
through this
library.
very hard material.
My
And a bit
friend
of water
used
poured
that. I don't
over
know if
the
he used
block
that as an
shows these
excuse.
marks very clearly.
Kept beating him. Ha!
The block appears
Or
to
if
have
that's
not
true.
been cut
What?
all the way
Did he not
through,
pass away?
something that we are very fortunate to have evidence for, as it also appears to have been a remarkably thin edge, only a few millimeters of material, as evidenced by the lip that is left on the edge of
This
this
run's
block.
insane.
Look at the arc.
This is a
of the
really
saw
insane
and
run.
Just try to imagine the diameter of the tool. If it was indeed a circular saw, it may have been as much as 8 or 9 meters, or 25 feet or more in diameter. Some saw cuts that left precise arcs have been estimated by Christopher Dunn to have been made with saws up to 11 meters in diameter, which is over 30 feet. Primitive hand tools made from copper, indeed. I think this particular block was never quite finished, and it seems likely to me that many of the other basalt blocks that form part of the megalithic floors and walls on this site were likely cut in a similar fashion, and then they were polished to an astonishing level of flatness, which removed the grooves and the striation marks from the cut.
run.
These types
I've
of
ever had.
large
So
diameter
this
saws were also used on many other blocks at Abu Sir, and we see their markings in many other places. At Giza and on other sites, we have actual saw cuts that were started and not finished. The basalt floor to the east of the Great Pyramid has several such marks made into it. A close examination of the granite box inside the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid also reveals the striations and markings of great saws that were used to cut and shape it. Look for the flat surfaces on the top of this box inside the King's Chamber, and also the faint lines that indicate the machining process that are etched into the side of this box as you enjoy the just epic resonance in this amazing room.
So what happened was I didn't spend long enough in front of the glass. My quick pauses were too quick.